2021. Under the proposed congressional maps, my right foot would be in District 10, a Republican-held seat which would encompass the Texas Capitol, while my left foot would be in District 37, a Democratic-held seat encompassing most of Austin. Now, HB 1385 has already passed the House, and it's now working its way through the Senate, where a similar proposal is already being considered. One of those deals included blanket immunity, this is what he's hearing at least, meaning that the Justice Department would have dropped all investigations into UVA and would not have opened any further investigations in exchange for Jim Ryan's resignation. Now, we know that didn't happen because the Justice Department is still investigating UVA. There are at least publicly announced 5 investigations still ongoing. 2 of them were recently closed. This committee room is where lawmakers in the Senate Committee on Redistricting will hear more public testimony on how to redraw the state's congressional maps. Now, there is still no official map selected by the committee or the committee in the House, though hundreds of proposals have been submitted online. Ultimately, the final proposal may come from direction from the White House, as President Trump has urged Republicans to draw up to 5 new seats. If you follow Texas politics and you hadn't heard of State Representative Gene Wu before, you certainly have now. He's not here right now because he fled the state to stop proposed congressional redistricting. Governor Greg Abbott responded, filing a petition in the Texas Supreme Court to remove him from office. Welcome to the Cavalier Daily's Richmond Report. Richmond Report is our new video series highlighting the General Assembly's ongoing session. Lawmakers are likely to pass several bills which affect students, and you deserve to hear about them. Here's what's on the agenda this week. In Richmond, the House passing a major higher education reform bill.
62 noes 35, the bill passes.
House Bill 1385 passing the Democratic-controlled House.
This bill helps to rein in some of the things that we're seeing from our Board of Visitors. It talks a little bit about a governance reform, talking a little bit about appointments.
HB 1385 would make major changes to university governing boards. The bill would reform the appointment process, codifying a court decision from last July. HB 1385 establishes that when the governor makes a Board of Visitors appointment, that person begins serving, but can be voted down in committee without a full floor vote. If a nominee is voted down, they must immediately stop serving. Delegate Lily Franklin is a freshman delegate who represents a district including Virginia Tech. She said she introduced the bill after last year's controversies.
Well, like what we saw at UVA this past year, and we saw in George Mason, there have been very partisan activities happening. You get directives from the federal government and then that are very partisan in nature that aren't necessarily aligned with the university and what is good for the university.
Last June, UVA President Jim Ryan resigned after facing pressure from Trump's Department of Justice. After stepping down, Democrats blocked several of Governor Youngkin's board appointees. They accuse Youngkin's appointees of failing to protect Ryan from outside interference. HB 1385 goes further than just changing the appointment process. The bill also explicitly bars board members from acting politically in their official capacity. Franklin admitted that line is not always clear. How do you find the line between explicitly partisan activity versus just maybe a difference of opinion or a difference of policy perspective?
I think that is a difficult thing to navigate. You can have directives that are partisan in nature, but also maybe don't align with the good of the university. Because right now it's not in the Board of Visitors' scope that they can behave in a partisan manner, and that is perfectly okay.
HB 1385 also seeks to change the role of the university's top lawyer. The bill would set up a working group to examine moving the University Council out from the authority of the Attorney General. That move could allow a university to defend itself in court without AG approval. One provision struck from the bill would have given voting power to the student representative on the Board of Visitors. Franklin said she will continue to push for that going forward.
It's really just making sure that we can rebuild the trust that we have in our Board of Visitors. It's just the first step, definitely. There's still a lot more we need to do.
Now, HB 1385 has already passed the House, and it's now working its way through the Senate, where a similar proposal is already being considered. Reporting here from UVA, I'm Ford McCracken.
I was literally about to go text a bunch of my group chats to be like, guys, go out and vote. It's so easy.
They are temporary maps, so we'll get, assuming it passes, our bipartisan commission back in 2030.
I voted yes because I think the Democrats should have more seats. I also think that Republicans have pushed gerrymandered maps in other states.
I have pretty deep reservations about the practice of gerrymandering. I also, though, feel the need to be practical, and I know that Trump last summer, with his calls to people in the Texas legislature, kicked off some mid-decade redistricting that I'm definitely not a fan of. So the way I see it is kind of we can, as Democrats, roll over and let the other side play by new rules, or we can kind of get down in the mud. I'm choosing to do some extreme things to hopefully put a check on Trump's power.
I'm a Republican. I'm very conservative values, but I vote for what I think is right and what is morally right, and not necessarily go along with party lines. Gerrymandering shouldn't happen. Of course, we get the argument, oh, Texas did it, this other state did it, but we also can't ignore the fact that other Democratic states have done it, and so it's not fair, and we shouldn't take those other states and impose that on Virginia because it's not fair.
I came out to vote today because I'm very passionate about the upcoming midterm elections. I hope that the Democrats get a majority in the House so that we can really just fight back against a lot of what the Trump administration has been doing.
They don't teach you this in school, but I think in a fight, it matters who punches first. I think if Democrats had kicked this off unilaterally, say in Virginia or California, which did a very similar referendum just this past November, I think that would matter a lot. I think we didn't. Trump did. There was no plans to do mid-decade redistricting until Trump asked his cronies in the legislature. So the way I see it, you play with fire, sometimes you get burnt.
I've seen a lot of that of saying the math isn't fair, we shouldn't vote for that because, again, it's gerrymandering, it's not fair, and that's not a very democratic process. So I've heard some Democratic students say that they don't believe in this.
I worked some of the early voting locations this past weekend and the weekend before. Turnout was pretty steady, and I'd heard good things from some nonpartisan election officers who stopped by.
I think it's also disappointing that the university didn't cancel classes today to encourage more people to vote. I found that generally gets people out and about. It's the middle of final season and like end of year, so I think everything compounded has just made it a bit more difficult for students to come out. I
think anything could happen. I've also heard from some kind of moderate Democrats who are voting no because of their opposition to gerrymandering. So anecdotally, some discouraging signs. Well, we'll see what happens.
We are out here waiting to be listened to, and they are ignoring us. Do not touch university administrators around this area who are refusing to say the justification.
But I've never seen something like that where just stepping on the steps of the rotunda means that I get pushed off by a police officer.
On the steps of the rotunda at
Others, or is there open seating for anyone?
Yeah, so the problem is that the boardroom isn't big enough to accommodate the voices of students who are rightfully pissed off about what this Board of Visitors has been doing. We're here to line up to try to get in the room, but to your point, we know the Board of Visitors has set up a structure that makes being heard impossible, and that's intentional. They don't want to listen to what we have to say, and what we're here saying today is no, you're going to have to listen because at the end of the day, you serve this university and it is our community that makes up that university.
On the Cavalier Daily's Richmond report this week, the lawmaking part of session is largely over. But after another deadly shooting at a Virginia university, in more than 3 years since the November 13th shooting at UVA, several gun bills finally have a good chance of becoming law. The bills, passed mostly along party lines, would make significant changes to gun laws in Virginia. Here's a closer look at the bills and the potential legal challenges. In Richmond, session adjourned.
House adjourned.
The 2026 legislative session comes to an end for now. With unified control of government for Democrats, the party passing major legislative priorities without GOP support. One such bill is Senate Bill 272, which would ban possessing a firearm inside a public university building. Senator Corey Deeds, who represents Charlottesville, has been pushing for this bill ever since the November 13th, 2022 shooting at UVA.
It's all connected to the tragedy that occurred at UVA back in 2022, and 3 young people that died, and 2 other people whose lives were changed forever because they got wounded. This is not unreasonable, I don't think. I think people, when they send their children to college, they expect them to be safe.
Prior to the shooting, the university was made aware that Christopher Darnell Jones Jr., who was later convicted of murder, possibly possessed a gun on grounds. Possessing a firearm on grounds was already a violation of university policy. If SB 272 is signed by the governor, it will become explicitly illegal. Deeds said that would allow law enforcement to more easily execute a search warrant if they receive a tip.
They've said it's against the rules to have a firearm on college campus, but because we didn't make it a crime, guns have, of course, been on college campuses.
SB 272 is part of a larger slate of gun bills passed this session. Democrats also passed SB 749, a ban on assault weapons, and SB 496, requiring locked storage of firearms left in unattended vehicles. Of course, Democrats in many states have passed gun laws, and the biggest hurdle doesn't seem to be the passage. It's what comes next: legal challenges.
Hi, I'm Haley Lawrence. I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Firearms Law here at Duke Law School.
Haley Lawrence has followed legal challenges to gun laws around the country for years. She says that SB 272 could run into legal challenges, but that it is likely to prevail.
Heller is a big case that was decided in 2008. That's sort of the watershed moment in the Second Amendment. And in that decision, they wrote, quote, "Nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on longstanding prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools and government buildings."
Lawrence says that the Supreme Court has upheld the right to restrict firearms in, quote, sensitive places, including a university campus. She points out that UVA was one of the first universities to restrict firearms on campus.
Students would, quote, brandish guns freely, sometimes shooting in the air, sometimes at each other. Their behavior was such a great humiliation to Thomas Jefferson that he, being on the Board of Visitors at the time, voted to ban students from having firearms on campus.
Any possible legal challenges to the bill would head to the Fourth Circuit. That court has already upheld gun restrictions in other states. Now, Lawrence tells me that while she believes the Virginia laws will stand for now, multiple conservative Supreme Court justices have already expressed interest in reviewing assault weapons bans from other states around the country. Lawrence says that if the Supreme Court does take up those cases, she expects that the assault weapons bans will be struck down. As for SB 272, it has one more hurdle to becoming law. The governor has to sign it. Deeds tells me he thinks she will. Reporting for Richmond Report this week, I'm Ford McCracken. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.